reason not to see number 1, the pacing.
I personally felt that the pacing was off. The tone shifting was happening an awful lot, and there was a lot of it seemed very dragged out and then a little choppy at times too. The editing of it was kind of a turnoff to me.
On a technical level, I agree with you with. It's like certain scenes go on for a while, and then they'll cut to this really short scene, and then they'll go to a long action scene, and then they'll cut up to this really long talk scene, and it's like
there's a lot of tonal shifts.
Yeah, and since they're trying to bring it into the Lord of the Rings universe, you have like humorous stuff and light stuff, and then you mix with this really heavy
stuff. Yeah.
It didn't really bug me that much, but I do agree that the pacing is kind of weird.
The pacing did bother me a lot.
Yeah.
Jerry, you're not getting it. You're wrong about the pacing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Let me amend that.
You're not getting it.
I messed up. The pacing was awful.
Split decision number 1, writing and directing issues.
Here's where I felt I was most disappointed with the film. You know, honestly, I thought one of the mistakes that they made was actually bringing Peter Jackson back to direct, was because it felt like Lord of the Rings, but exceptionally smaller, and I would have preferred a different take on the film.
I get what you're saying there. I mean, this was one of those things where when I heard Guillermo del Toro was attached to it, I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah,
like,
I would have liked to
he's the guy, if it's not Peter Jackson, he's the guy who I would want to do it. And then he backed off, and it was the sort of thing where Peter Jackson came back and it was like, well, I know he's gonna do a good job on a lot of stuff, but it's not as exciting anymore.
Yeah.
You can tell he loves the world, but it might be to a point where there aren't a lot of people to challenge the vision around.
Yeah, I think the film lacked a lot of heart. I could never get fully emotionally pulled into the movie. It seemed more like an observation of this world rather than being into the world again. It looks great, but it seemed more about the technical special effects and all that more than it did about the actual storytelling.
See, I don't necessarily think that it's not about the storytelling and it's only about the technical stuff. I just think that it's kind of like it couldn't decide what to focus on. We've got this guy's story and he's dealing with that conflict, but then we're going to jump over to this guy's story and he's dealing with this, and then we're going to bring in another character from the other side of, you know, Middle-earth, and he's having a problem here. And it's all sort of to set up that there is trouble afoot in Middle-earth, but it does kind of block you from fully connecting to stuff. And I'm not one of those people who's like, it's gotta be like the book. But the book is Bilbo's story, and a lot of his, like he's definitely a prominent character, like it is his story in some ways, but they do shift the focus to other things a lot too.
You see, you're talking about Bilbo, and that was my problem with the film, was despite the fact that there were solid performances in the film, I still did not really give a shit about anyone in this movie.
Oh.
I didn't. I wasn't rooting for Bilbo, I wasn't really rooting for the dwarves, and the combination of trying to include the Lord of the Rings tonality into it, I found the humor to be kind of a turnoff at times. It seemed to be rather of an annoyance than an actual pleasure and fun joy to experience.
Mm-hmm. I didn't mind the humor because, like, I know, like, the movie begins the way the book does. Like, and again, it's not all about being like the book, but I was at least prepped for that. Mm-hmm. And I know that, you know, it's like I respect that they want to bring it into the Lord of the Rings universe, because even Tolkien was trying to do that. I don't know if they balanced it all particularly well. The way it comes together in, you know, the editing and the writing and stuff like that is a little problematic, I will give you.
I just felt that the story itself could be told in 2 movies. I don't think it needs to be told in 3 films. Peter Jackson seems to really be stretching this thing out, and I think he's going way beyond its limits.
You know, I've heard it said a few times that a lot of this movie feels like setup. And yeah. I kind of agree. There is a lot of setup, and I don't know how the next 2 movies are gonna go, because it's like, on the one hand, they get pretty far in The Hobbit, as I recall, in the course of this movie. So I don't know what else they're adding. You know, I don't know if some of this setup will pay off more in the movies to come. But as of now, I'm almost a little worried about the next 2, just because I'm like, how much more can you put in, and is it still going to be kind of off balance or not?
Yeah, because some people are defending the film saying like, well, the first one's like a build-up. Well, I want more of a interesting build-up. You know, it's weird to me because I'm looking at the film and I'm going, it looks great and the acting's good. Everything seems kind of solid actually. Yet it's still, when the movie was over, it still felt kind of blah.
The dwarves are our main character because it is, you know, it is about the 14 of them. So you do kind of have this problematic ensemble because it's a shit ton of people.
Yeah.
But at least it's like, you know, Gandalf, at least Gandalf, Thorin, and Bilbo should be sort of at the top of that, of you know, the characters that we're focusing on. And they do sort of go more into focusing on the dwarves. And it does sort of drop off Bilbo a little bit.
The only thing I'm really comparing this film on with Lord of the Rings is execution. Because Lord of the Rings has so many characters, and each film felt like a complete film. And the thing is, this has an ensemble too, but as far as the dwarves go, I didn't find them that interesting. I just did not. And they all kind of behave the same except for its leader.
Yeah.
I just felt that the first hour or two was just so much talking, just non-stop talking, and it was just so blah 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 to me, and it just kept taking forever to get going. Every scene I felt could have been trimmed down. Except for the Gollum scene. That's the one scene where I was like,
make it longer.
Yeah, make that scene longer. Just I could watch a play of that one scene.
Yeah.
And this film, every scene was just so dragged out to me. It's like, come on, man, trim it down. At least it wasn't like Watchmen, where you're like, come on, man, speed up the frame.
Yeah, we don't need to see him pick up a pen in slow motion. Like, some of those scenes go on a while. I never found myself bugged by it though. I still liked watching it.
I was getting Jerry, it was boring.
My opinion is wrong. I'm sorry.
Your opinion is wrong.
I'm just off my game today.
It was boring. It was boring.
Okay, alright.
I accepted this film on its own merit, so I wasn't watching it comparing it to the Lord of the Rings trilogy the whole time. Because I'll admit, I love that trilogy, but I've only seen it once or twice, so I don't really remember it to a full extent to compare it detail by detail.
Same here.
But all I know is those films were pulled off magically, and this film did not feel majestic to me.
See, I thought it got the majesty. Again, the word I keep going back to is just kind of lopsided. Like, it's like the Lord of the Rings movies, you never question the flow really, or at least I didn't. It was like, everything seems to lead logically to the next thing, and even when they're jumping back and forth, it all makes sense. And in this movie, it just sort of felt a little lopsided.
See, logically, technically, it's all there.
Yeah.
Emotionally, I didn't feel it.
Yeah, it's not balanced out right.
Yeah. And for me, this should be a good emotional experience. You know, not a letdown, Jerry. Not a letdown.
I'm sorry. Do you hug?
It's okay. I could use a blowjob right now.
Okay.
Split decision number 2. Azog.
The white orc.
Yeah. I thought the effects on him were awesome. They were. I thought it was. No.
Well,
No.
on him, he was one of the characters where I didn't think the effects were bad by any stretch of the imagination, but he was the one character where I kept going back and forth as to whether I felt he looked good.
Oh really? I thought he looked. And the first time you see him in that big battle when they're showing the flashback between the dwarves and them. That was a crazy cool fight scene. I thought it was.
I thought it was a cool fight scene. Yeah, well,
scary. Yeah.
Well, and see, that was different. Like, I liked the intro. There were just times where I kind of found myself trying to figure out if he was real or CG, and not in the good way.
Oh, I kind of get what you mean, actually, because I was doing that too. I thought he was CG at first, but then when he started talking later on, I was like, oh, is this a real guy that's actually playing him?
I just kind of felt like that subplot was kind of crowbarred in.
What I will say about that subplot is that it felt like it could have been wrapped up in this movie. Like, I was watching it thinking, yeah, I could see how it's personal, but why is this the main focus? I like the character, but as far as this being Thorin's main villain, I think they could have put the attention elsewhere.
Yeah, it's just, it almost diluted the point for me. It was like, it's like we're going back to the Lonely Mountain to reclaim, you know, our kingdom from Smaug, but there's also this guy who's coming after us, but there's trouble over here.
Yeah.
And then there's this stuff.